What's going on, everyone? My name is Javon Brown, and this is the Forever Getting Better podcast. Now, we've done 20 episodes prior, maybe 21, something like that, but it's been a while and we've taken a long break since the podcast has been a thing. So, I'm back. You can expect episodes more regularly. This is just the first. All right, now I'm thinking about having a weekly schedule, but who knows? Maybe it'll come back to being a daily thing. That being said, I did want to put this first episode out, which is about unshakable focus and consistency, right? And I think that's only appropriate because we've been away for so long. Now, this year, there were some very ambitious goals that I stated for myself. I don't know if I shared them here on the podcast, but I definitely shared them on Instagram and I shared them on my YouTube channel. You can find me at Javon Dupree. If you search Javon Dupree on Instagram or YouTube, then you're sure to find any of my content. That being said, one of the goals that I stated was that I was going to post a video every single day. And part of what I was doing with the podcast was extracting the audio from those videos and I was putting it onto the podcast, right? And I thought that was going to be a more sustainable thing. Um, Come to find out, that didn't always seem appropriate. That was the plan at the beginning. But over time, I ended up losing focus and just basically started doing too much. So that's the reason why we're going to go over this. Ultimately, this podcast is supposed to be a reminder for myself as much as it is supposed to be like educational content and good content, inspirational, motivational content for other people. That being said, let's get into the actual episode. So, for focus and consistency, everything matters, right? We want to focus on basically what we're going to call the five F's. So, that the five F's. So, that's going to be faith, family, fitness, finance, and fun. And we'll go into more detail about them. But right now, we're going to start with talking about what's needed for unshakable focus, right? And the first thing that we really want to think about when it comes to unshakable focus is routine. Well, routine is extremely important. The thing is at the end of the day, we are still biological beings. We're still animals, and if you think about the nature, right? If you think about the nature of any living being, right? There's a specific time when it wakes up. There's a specific time when it goes to bed. There's a specific time when it eats. There's a specific time when it socializes and communes with other animals, right? So all like if you have a biological block, if you have a biological clock of any kind, man, I can't talk today, but if you have a biological clock of any kind, then that means that there is a routine that you are supposed to have. Now, everybody's routine is not the same, but if you are somebody who's operating particularly outside of your job without a routine, then let me tell you something, you're just going to fall into habits. So at the end of the day, you have to realize that there are habits and routines that are going to naturally come about in your life, especially if you're not intentional. And if you want to change those, then you need to be mindful. You have to be self-aware. You need to have focus. So when it comes to routine, well, since COVID, since the pandemic, I hope I can say that on YouTube now, but since the pandemic, there have been over 53 studies that have been done by different like medical groups and doctors and psychologists, behavioral scientists, universities, where they were looking at routine. And those studies, those 53 studies involved over 1 million individuals. And what they all found, all of them unanimously found, is that when people's routines, particularly during the pandemic, was disrupted and people no longer started following the same routine that they had before, there was an increase in mental ailments all across the board, right? So increases in depression, increases in anxiety. There was an issue with what we'll call some people call it retail therapy, but an increase in spending. People just didn't have as much money. We got stimulus checks, and then people still didn't use them in order to get out of some of the financially destitute situations that they were in. Right? There were people who couldn't go to work, and they got a stimulus check that kind of was supposed to help them float for a couple of months. Ultimately, it didn't help. Right? They spent those on those things. You may have been one of those people who did that. And so the thing is like even though the pandemic is over, there's still high levels of mental ailments, still high levels of depression, still high levels of anxiety. And the reason why, part of the reason why, is because we still have tons of people who have not implemented a routine, and it's definitely one of the most difficult things, right? To exercise our sense of free will and to really sit down and say, well, this is what feels good and this is what I want to do. But ultimately, if I want to have a better life, this is what I have to do, right? And the next question is like, okay, well, if I know that a routine is important and a routine is something that I need, particularly if I don't want to keep feeling these ailments and I do want to get back to what normal is or what normal was, particularly before the pandemic, then what am I supposed to do? Right. Well, that kind of brings us to our next point, which is prioritizing. Right. And so prioritizing is really going to be the unlock or the key to figuring out what the most optimal routine for you is going to be. And going back to the five F's. So let's think about once again about faith, family, fitness, finance, and fun. This is the thing about prioritizing. You can't have several priorities, right? Prioritizing priorities, right? Priorities was never meant to be a plural words. It's just a priority. You have one priority. It's singular. It actually comes from a Latin word, which means first, right? It's an old Latin word that means first. And when we're talking about the verb prioritizing, we're talking about putting things in order of importance. So you can't have multiple priorities. That defeats the purpose, because then you're saying that like everything is just as important. And while everything is interconnected, right, the five F's all matter. There's only one place where we can put our attention at one specific point in time. And so there's an old Russian saying that I like. It says, "He who chases two rabbits catches neither." And so what I'm asking you, right, and is really this: what is the thing? Because you're just one person, so you can only chase one rabbit. So what's the thing that you're going to get after first within the day? Right? For me, that's going to be faith, right? My relationship with God, with Christ, is extremely important. I think that my meaning, my purpose is deeply interconnected with what I'm going to do for any day of the week, right? For any plan that I make, it's intertwined with my purpose, and my purpose is assigned to me by the Creator of the universe. So, I'll start my day. I'll wake up, and the very first thing, my very first priority is going to be faith, right? And it's going to be about studying. It's going to be about prayer. It's going to be about reflection. It's going to be about meditation and really figuring out what am I supposed to do, and am I on track based on like where He wants me to be, right? So that's the very first thing. Now, the next thing for me is going to be family. And some of you may be thinking, like, what about friends? What about friends and coworkers and all of those other people? Well, here's the thing. There's another saying that I really like, and people get this one wrong. So some people think that the saying is that blood is thicker than water, right? And that's the whole saying, but it's not. The whole saying, right? The whole phrase is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. And so what that means is that the relationships that you choose and the friendships and the bonds that you make run deeper than people that you're just related to, right? And that's the way that I look at it when it comes to my family. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my family. They mean a lot to me, my blood relatives. At the end of the day, when I'm talking about the people that I check in with on a regular basis, though, it's going to be those bonds and those friendships and those relationships that affect me on the day to day. And so my cousins that live in Germany may not necessarily be the people that I'm thinking about when I wake up, have finished my time with God, and then go into my time texting or messaging my family, right? The people that are closest to me that I want to make sure are okay. Once my relationships have been nurtured and my relationship with God has been nurtured, and those things have been taken care of, the very next thing that I'm going to think about for myself is finances, right? So in Ecclesiastes, it says that money that money is the answer to all things, which is to not be confused with the love of money, which is the root of all evil. We don't want to love money, but that's a conversation for another day. What we do want to do is recognize that in order for us to live and have the lifestyles that we want to have and have the impacts on our communities that we want to have, that money is needed. And so at that point in my day, I'm going to check my email. I'm going to look at my budget. Am I where I need to be financially? I'm also going to, based on my budget, and based on the goals that I have long term, like how much money do I need to make in order to hit those goals, and what do I need to do in order to make that money? And so I'll start planning the rest of my work day around that, right? So based on the financial goals that I have and the amount that I have right now and the cash flow that I have that's expected to come in, what needs to be done in order for me to reach the goals that I've set for myself financially, or that have been set for me financially, right? And then after I've figured out the finance piece, once I've gotten some work done for the day, I'm going to go to the gym, and that's how I take care of the fitness aspect for me. This is also around the same time where I might start to incorporate some fun into my life, and this is one of the things, and this is going to kind of take us into the next topic, which has to do with burnout, right? But we're getting there, right? Consistency, and the opposite of consistency is burnout. That's the way I see it. It's inconsistency, right? And what leads to inconsistency is burnout. But the thing is like when it comes to exercise in particular, people tend to think about at some point when you were a kid, right? So at some point when you were a kid, you didn't think about exercise. It wasn't exercise. It wasn't fitness. That wasn't what you called it. It wasn't the way that you saw it. It wasn't a thing that you needed to schedule into your day. And it wasn't an inconvenience and something that you had to mentally prepare yourself for. You just called it fun, right? You called it fun. Recess, even, right? Break time, playtime. So those are the terms that you used, and that was the time that you were looking forward to, where you got to stretch your brain and stretch your imagination. If you were the type of person who built things or drew things or painted things, right? And you know, played make believe, any of those things, you worked your brain, played with puzzles, or you were the kind of kid who like me, you were on your bike, always out in the street, or on your skateboard. You were maybe you were a cheerleader or a golfer or basketball player, like whatever your thing was, you had something that you did for fun. And so, what we really want to do, and what I really want to do, is incorporate fitness and fun into each other. I want to blend those two. I want to blur the lines, right? And ultimately, I really want everything to be fun, and that's what's going to make the routine as sustainable as possible. But when it comes to fitness, right? Well, I like longboarding. I like riding my bike. I like golfing. And so those are the things that I'm going to try and incorporate into my fitness and my fun aspect of life, right? My daily routine. So all of that being said, right, like let's get back to the, I guess, the main topic, or the next topic, which is going to be about being consistent and effectively avoiding burnout. So ultimately, just to recap though, my daily routine does reflect that God is more important than anything else. So I am going to start my day with study and prayer, and then after that, I'll do the text messages, and then after that, I'll look at my budget, and then based on my budget, that's what's going to dictate what my actual work day is supposed to be. I'll go throughout my work day, and then once my work day is complete, I'm going to have fun. Right, that's my routine. All of that being said, in order to keep this consistent, right, we need to be able to say no. So the number one thing that leads to burnout, right, that leads to inconsistency and ultimately to burnout, is a heavy workload. So there were two studies that I was able to find. There was one by Mayo Clinic that was done in 2011, and another one by Kaiser Permanente for Business, and both of them pointed to the same thing, which was essentially working long hours and just having too much on one's plate. Sometimes it's not even necessarily working too much, but just making too many commitments, and the overwhelm is what leads to burnout. So, number one is just being able to say no. And that means saying no to not just other people, but also to yourself. So, because sometimes you may see an opportunity or something that you want to do, and that seems fun or exciting. And the fact is like doing that thing is counterproductive to you reaching the big long term goals that you have. That the little micro steps that are in your daily routine are supposed to take you. So, if I want to get a six pack, right? If I want to get a six pack, so one of the things that I would have committed to in order to get a six pack is maybe doing crunches every day, right? Doing crunches every day and eating the right foods, right? But also in my flesh, or just based on my nature, I'm the kind of person who likes to go out. I like eating junk food. Going to friends' houses and having all of the chips and snacks that they have on the table. And the thing is like I may want to say no to that, even though that's something that I love doing, because Ultimately, if I say yes to that, that's going to detract and take me away from my goal of having a six pack, right? Eating all of that bad stuff, sitting on the couch. Now my energy levels are down. I'm out late because I was socializing all night. I wake up the next morning. I'm supposed to resume my morning routine, but I just don't have the energy. I'm all brain fogged. I'm not feeling my best. I go to exercise and I don't even have enough energy to exercise after I worked for the day because I'm still recovering from the night before. Like, these are the reasons why sometimes it's necessary for us to say no, right? So the the way that we want to actually increase our productivity and increase our longevity, our ability to remain consistent is it's really based on that. And then the other thing is by optimizing our actual routine, right? So like when it comes to the other things that we do, the things that are actually on our routine, like exercise, like focusing on our finances and work, what we also want to do is minimize our workload. And so this is kind of like the last point. But minimizing your workload means minimizing the amount of work that you have to do any specific day. You just want to be as efficient as possible, right? And so if I'm the kind of person that says, one of the goals that I had at one point was to come out with a video every day. And one of the things that actually led to burnout for me was hours and hours of editing. Anytime I recorded anything, it just needs to be perfect. And I need to come out with this perfect product before it went out on the internet for other people to see. And while that felt very good for me, the fact is, and I've actually seen this when you look at the numbers, people like the authenticity, right? You like authenticity. You like seeing things that are real. And while the highly edited thing may be something that I enjoy and may be entertaining for the people who watch it, the fact is like it doesn't even spread as far as the honest message that doesn't have the fancy music. And so like it actually for me is I get a better result from just coming out with the more or less the raw video without all of the fancy edits. Not just that, but it saves significantly more time for me to not do all of that. Also, I may not want to do all the editing manually myself. I might want to put it into something like Opus Clip or use AI video edits through CapCut or one of these other third-party services. And that saves me tons and tons of time. It's way more efficient. And so instead of having this hours and hours long process of recording or scripting and planning and then setting up and then recording and then editing and then scheduling, instead of doing all of that, I'm just going to maybe I'll just brainstorm some thoughts whenever they come to me, write down the bullet points in a notepad like I did now. You see me looking at my phone now, if you're watching the video. And the fact is like you'll see me doing this a lot more in the future because it's not about having the perfect video, but it is about giving value and being as authentic and honest as possible. So like you'll see me doing those sorts of things, right? Or I'll see myself doing those sorts of things in order to minimize the amount of time that I spend recording. Like instead of doing all of that stuff, I'm just going to do the voice memos, get a few bullet points, record the video, put it in the AI video editor, and then upload it. Way easier, way more simple, way less work, right? And I guess that's really the meat and potatoes. So that's pretty much the video. But like just to kind of recap, this was really about having unshakable focus, and the core of having unshakable focus means developing a routine, right? A series of habits that you're able to consistently use, and that routine should reflect whatever is most important to you down to what's least important, right? So I'm okay with being a fat person who has a great relationship with Christ, but I'm not okay with being like a superstar stud looking guy who dies and doesn't have a relationship with Christ, doesn't live within his meaning or purpose, is broke, right? Doesn't have a good relationship with his family, right? So if I want to make sure that my relationships are good, whether it's with Christ or with my family, the people who are closest to me, then I should put those things first within my routine. So that's pretty much it for today. Once again, you can expect a video on various topics within the 5 Fs at least once a week. And I'm just going to throw this out here as a little bonus. I'm also starting this new thing where I'll be posting at least 3 times a day on social media. This is not the space where it's appropriate to talk about that, but if that sounds interesting to you, then you can follow me on Instagram at Javon Dupree, or you can go to my other YouTube channel, which is just Javon Dupree. That's it. That's all I got for you today. This has been the Forever Getting Better podcast, the reboot, and I will talk to you in the next episode. God bless.